Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Speculation Station. I'm your host, Captain Ketter. I'm joined by Rogue Commander. Say hi.
Hi.
I'm also joined by Bodhi.
How's it going, everyone?
And today we are also joined, and we have the privilege of being joined by Ben, aka Downsizeit.
Greetings.
So today we're going to do a little question and answer session hosted mostly by Bodhi. So Bodhi's going to be leading an interview of each of us, asking us various questions about uh, how you start your own community in an area and how you keep it going. What is that like? What does that entail? And also, how do you create media for a game you like? Let it be Star Wars Armada or some other game. So we'll jump right into that. Bodhi, would you like to take it away?
I would love to. So, the main reason that I wanted to have this discussion, um, I really feel like what Armada needs is more people doing cool things in the community. And we have a lot of known figures and known names that are doing those kinds of things. Um, I mean, I could list them off, and we would all know them, recognize the names. Uh, Actually, just let me start over. I feel like I'm rambling.
No, it's fun.
Um, yeah, so the main reason that I wanted to have this discussion is to try and inspire some people to get their own communities started or start making content for Star Wars Armada. On episode 2, which was my first time on this podcast, I remember I spoke about people who are getting new into the game and they want to go on YouTube and watch videos, or they're learning about the game and they want to listen to a podcast. And obviously, people who are starting to play a game want a community to play that game in. And so, hopefully, the tips and lessons that the individuals on this podcast have been learning will help inspire and teach some of you guys how to start your own communities or make content for yourself so we can grow what the Star Wars Armada community is in more locations. So the first topic that I'm going to discuss is specifically on growing a community. So Ben, what kinds of behind the scenes stuff did you do when you were starting the Osmo community?
So that could almost be considered a loaded question because the Osmo community, when it became Osmo, we had already started developing new players around Northwest Arkansas. And prior to that, I had already started my YouTube channel for Star Wars Armada and other gaming at the time. So I guess like the brief version is when I started playing Star Wars Armada, as far as I knew, no one else in Northwest Arkansas was playing Star Wars Armada. But I decided to buy in. This was back in 2017. And my core group of friends, which is Buster, aka Banshee, and Social General Rob, we played tons of games together anyway. So I just kind of dragged them into Armada saying, hey, there's this new game I just bought. And use my stuff, let's start playing. So we just started playing together. And it wasn't until 2020, ironically, when the pandemic hit, when I decided to start my own channel. And it was when I started my own channel, just randomly, some local people saw it, realized that we were in the same area, and reached out to me. And Josh, that was you and Aaron. Y'all reached, I forget exactly how you reached out to me, but you reached out to me via the YouTube channel. And then I realized, hey, other people other than me and my core group of 2 friends are playing Armada. They're in the area. And we were able to utilize our local game stores to start organizing and start getting basically play dates together, game dates together. And after about a year of that, maybe not quite a year, 9 months, I just decided, you know what? Armada is pretty much, as a community as a whole, is sort of dead right now because AMG wasn't doing anything. The pandemic had killed all organized play. And I was like, I want to do something locally so we can actually start organizing a tournament style event. And what helped was I already had a good relationship with the owner of our local game store, who was Glenn at Gear Gaming. So we had a potential location. We used that for the second year. I'm getting ahead of myself. But I also knew we had at least now 5 to 6 players that could potentially be interested. And it really just came down to starting to find a location to play, contacting local connections, and then putting the word out. At that time, I was fortunate enough to have a bit of a channel following at that time, about a year and a half. I had my channel going at the time, but also putting the word out on Facebook and Discord, saying, hey, we're going to put this tournament together, and we're going to have prize support. Even though there was no official prize support, we had unofficial prize support. And this came down to having, again, another connection with Garrett, Admiral Tater's Ship Shop, to help supply that prize support. And it really came down to just putting the communication out, contacting people, not being, constantly reminding people of these things. So, I feel like I'm making this seem easier than it was. It wasn't really that easy starting off the first time. But, I feel like trying to tell someone to do it from scratch is different than the way I did it, because I already had a foundation I already had a local game store contact. I already had connections with Garrett Vance. I already had a YouTube channel. So those things were already bonuses in my favor. But it was still a matter of having to actually make the mental decision. I'm going to actually make this happen. I'm going to start making connections. I'm going to start reaching out, and just make it happen. Set a date and say, we're going to do it. No matter how many people show up. If it's only 4 people, who cares? We're still going to have a tournament. And we're going to make it happen. And then building off of that. So I'm going to pause there for any follow-ups.
Yeah, so I want to ask specifically, I know that you mentioned that you had a good relationship previously with Garrett and Glenn. Do you have any tips for someone who might not be as familiar with their local game store? Someone who's been there once or twice, or maybe even a lot, but just wouldn't know how to ask the question, can we host an event here?
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, let's start with the local game store part. So, obviously, this is speaking to people that actually have a local game store. And when I say local, I put that in air quotes. Even if it's maybe an hour and a half drive away, I would still loosely call that a local game store. An hour and a half drive is a commitment, but it's not a horrible commitment. And if you have that kind of resource within that radius, utilize it. Go there and set up an Armada game with a friend of yours, just like a friend or a family member or someone you know. Set up an Armada game. Give yourself visibility to the game store if you don't already have a relationship with them. And after you do that for several weeks or a couple months, approach the owner and just start having communications with them. Talk to them about Armada, how much you like Armada, and other games. Maybe play other games there where you might play, hey, we want to play a game of BattleTech or another board game you like, or Magic. Instead of playing it at your house with your friend, go to the local game store and play it, so that the owner and the other people that work there are getting visibility to you there, seeing you as a regular patron. And then when you see the owner there, start engaging in conversation, talking about games, etc. Just build that relationship by being at the game store. That's how I started building my relationship with Glenn, who is the owner of our local game store.
Ben, if I could interject on that point as well, I think that part of it is huge, especially in a game like Armada, where we don't have product really that is flying off the shelves because there's no physical releases. Mm-hmm. And so when we're going to a store that, like, doesn't have table fees and stuff like that, encourage players in the community to, like, go pick up that Christmas gift of Settlers of Catan or whatever business we can give them. I think that helps build that relationship with the stores, and like you said, just kind of increases your presence as part of that gaming community. But trying to give back to those game stores, I think, is important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Just being there, and like you said, even when you're buying things that aren't Armada, you're still supporting that game store, and they're seeing you support that game store. Mm-hmm. And this might seem minor, but every time I go to Year to play, either whether I'm playing casually or I'm filming a battle report, or we're doing one of our monthly Ozark Mountain Tournament Series events, mm-hmm. I always make it a point to purchase 2 or 3 things from their vending machine. Mm-hmm. Just buying food there, so at least it's something. I'm not just supporting them by being there, but also supporting them by purchasing things there, and that helps build that relationship with the people that run the store.
Yeah.
But once you build that relationship over a couple months or whatever, and then you start getting comfortable engaging in casual conversation with the owner and the other people that run the store, then it's much easier to approach them saying, hey, I want to organize a local tournament for Star Wars Armada and offer to have them, people would pay the store to participate in the tournament. We used to do $5 for a monthly. You could say, I'm going to have them pay $5 to participate in this little 2-round tournament we want to do. We'd like the store to host it. And then the winner gets a store credit. So it's not like a cash payout. It's still going back to the store, but it's also incentive for players to play as well. And also then purchase things at the store. So you start building that mutually beneficial relationship between yourself, the player base, and the people that own the local gaming store. And starting small, just start small. Just start with a 2-round tournament. About 6 hours. 6 hours is still a lot, but for us Armada players, that's nothing compared to a real tournament. But it's still something to encourage people to come out, start getting that engagement with the local player base, engagement with the local game store, and you start getting a following. Ask them to put up a flyer in the store window. Hey, every month or every 2 months, we're going to do a little Armada play session or an Armada tournament, whatever you want to call it, and just start slowly building that community. I'll leave it there for now before I start talking about Garrett and prize support. But just as far as slow building the community, it can take some time. It took almost 9 months to a year before I even realized there were other players in our area, and then we started building that from scratch.
Awesome. Well, so that will lead into my next point then. Obviously, there are lots of Armada players throughout the country and throughout the world that might not be as active in social groups and will just kind of spring up. But sometimes it might take a bit of convincing to get some new players to learn the game. Sometimes people will just sit down and they'll see a Superstar Destroyer on the table and they'll be like, that's really cool. I want to play this game. For me, for instance, it took a used board game sale and I saw the Victory and I thought that was what an ISD was. And I was like, man, this is such a cool model. And so I picked up the core set. But do you have any tips for teaching new players or how you would go about growing a community of people who are wanting to learn but don't want to buy things yet? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, of course. So if you have, let's say you love Armada, you're in an area that's quote unquote dead. You don't know anybody else that plays Armada. The only chance you get to play is if you go on TTS or something, or you travel to a regional tournament or something. Find your local game store. If you haven't gone before, maybe go there a couple times just to find out what other games people play there. Go during one of the busiest times, like on a Saturday or a Friday night or something, when people are going to be there, they're going to have traffic. Set up a table with Armada on it. Bring your stuff. Bring all your stuff. And just put models on the table. the hilarious thing, the ironic thing I find about Armada, which frustrates me anyway, I'm not going to go on that tangent, but it's so easy to market. The models are so big and so iconic. Everybody knows what a Star Destroyer looks like. Everybody knows what an X-Wing is, or the Tantive 5 CR90 is from the movies. Put it on the table. I promise you, people will come up and ask you, hey, what is that? You could even just be standing there by yourself with a game set up and know what you're not playing against anybody, and you're going to get traffic to the table, people asking you, what is that? And that just opens the door.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many, it's beyond the counting on my fingers on my hand, how many times that has happened. Not just at my local game store, whenever we're playing, we just have bottles on the table, random traffic asking, hey, what is that? Ooh, what is that? Ooh, that's so cool. Is that Star Wars? All the way up to being at Gen Con with me and Ken from Ion Radio are playing just a pickup game. It took us almost 4 hours to play that game because people kept walking by and stopping us, asking, hey, what is that? Mm-hmm. Just put the models on the table. You're going to get people asking about it, and that'll help you evangelize the game and introduce the game to players. And if you have enough models where you can field 2 fleets on your own, it doesn't even have to be 400 points. 200-point fleets on your own, you can just say, hey, let me show you how to play, or let's just run through a couple maneuvers here. Keep it nice and simple. Just throw dice. Don't worry about the specifics and the nitty-gritty of strategy. Just start having them say, hey, look, this is a Star Destroyer in range of this, home 1. You're in medium range. Here's 8 dice. Throw it. See how much damage you can do. Just to start getting people interested in, like, ooh, that's pretty cool. I just did 7 damage to, Admiral Akbar's ship. They didn't know how it happened. It doesn't matter. You're garnering interest, lighting that spark in their minds of the magic of Star Wars. Worry about the rules later. Just get them interested. And if they show interest in wanting to play, offer to provide them the models to play. Don't say, hey, you can go over here and buy this or buy that. Just let them play with your stuff for a while. That's what I did for 3 years. I let my friends play with my stuff for 3 years before Rob and Buster even bought into it. Those are my friends. So, anyway, I think I've made my point, but it's just put models on the table, and trust me, you're going to get people asking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a very similar experience when I was still living in Russellville, Arkansas, for anyone who lives somewhere else and has never heard of this place. There's 3,000 people who live there. It's a pretty small town, and there's literally nothing. But we did have 2 local game stores when I lived there, which is pretty fortunate. There's some places that don't have that. But one of them, I was playing with one of my friends at the local game store every week. And, people would come up and they would be interested, and I'd let them fly with my models. And that store in particular had a lot of tabletop game players, like Warhammer, and Infinity was really popular for a while just before I moved. And the good thing about, you can draw in people like that if they... I guess what drew me into wanting to spend a bunch of money on Armada is that there was no need to build or paint anything. And for people who enjoy the hobby aspect, you can still paint your stuff. But for people who don't enjoy the hobby aspect, there's no need to. You have a beautiful model, just right out the gate. So real quick before we move on too much, Chris and Josh, do you guys have any points on? I know that you haven't directly started your own, communities, but you have had quite a bit of influence in communities. Do you have any points that you'd like to add to this?
I'll go first. So something I would like to add is that consistency is really important when you're trying to build a community. In Arkansas with Ben, both of us really loved Armada, and so both of us were hankering to play. That's a poor choice of words for our international friends. Both of us were very eager to play this game and meet up and just play again any chance we got, essentially. And so, I was always ready whenever either he or Aaron or Buster, or I don't know if I ever played with Rob casually other than in a tournament, but whenever someone asked me, I was like, yeah, let's go play. But Ben did a really good job of being consistent with his tournament series and working with the store owner to be consistent and like having these dates set in advance so that by the time we had a tournament, he had already decided or set up with the owner usually when the next tournament was going to be. So he could announce at the end of the tournament, hey, everybody, like this is the standings. Everybody gets a round of applause, hand out the prizes, and then thanks for coming out. Come back in this day. So that was already in everybody's mind to come back. So yeah, being consistent with that, I think, is something that made the Arkansas area like more successful, and for the Osmo series. And Ben has also done a really good job of getting the word out through his. Yeah, Ben has done a really good job disseminating his podcast, his not podcast, his YouTube channel, all the information through that about the tournaments, and then the Osmo big tournament itself as well, which has been consistently seen a high number of players for the region. So a tournament on any given day would give like 8 players, 6 players, maybe up to like 10 or 12 players. On those days for the major tournaments, we'd see like up to 16 players or maybe even more on the first one. I can't remember. But yeah, that's been something that I've made a commitment to like travel to for myself, like because I love Arkansas, love the food, love the area. So any chance I get to go play Armada, it's great. And then get to see all my friends that I made when I got into the game. It's just like an added bonus.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on what you said, and I'm glad you brought up about the consistency part. It's important to put dates in people's minds so they can just mark it on their calendar and they can plan for it and look forward to it. So that is one thing I try to do. But if you can say, hey, our next one is January 17th, this date's locked in, people can mark that on their calendars. If you can do that 3 weeks to a month out, and then do the next one after that, and then the next one after that, as opposed to saying, 4 days out. Oh, by the way, we're gonna have a tournament this Saturday. People have lives, and to do even just a 2-round tournament, you have to commit 6 hours, 6.5 hours to your life to do that. You need to give people time to plan. So yeah, plan ahead and give people a date that they can mark in their minds or on their calendar so they can start planning it and looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think the consistency, I think you're all correct. Yeah, the consistency is key. And that's what we've struggled with in the Dallas area, I think, for a variety of reasons. And like here, and Ben, you did a really good job. I remember like over the course of just a few months, like, oh, who's this Downsizeit guy? Like I was seeing stuff on YouTube and linked to other stuff. And then there's the gameplay videos, and then Osmo is a thing. And so like you did a good job of kind of pushing it all together in the same time period. And here, I don't know, we've struggled with consistency. So like here, I'm going to reach out to some people in the area to see if they can kind of help manage what little there is to manage, just so it's more consistent. Because when real life takes over, suddenly pushing spaceships around is not as important. So you want to have stuff that people can plan around.
Yep, absolutely. And, sometimes it's good just to, when you put the date down, let's say a lot of people can't commit, just for yourself, still commit to be there.
Yeah.
I don't want to paint a rosy picture of what was sometimes, a struggle or just hard, quote unquote, big time air quotes, hard times. But there have been many of our small monthly tournaments where it's just been me and one other person.
Yep.
And we just play 2 rounds. We just let ourselves just play casually, practice the tournament style games, and it was just us 2. We didn't rotate. So it's, commit to a date, commit to be there if you're organizing, and if only one person shows up or two people show up, still do it. Don't just cancel if only a couple people show.
Yeah, and I think there's a distinction in my mind now about what it takes to maintain a community is kind of like the world, pre-COVID and like post-COVID. Like before all the disruption of COVID that coincided with the switchover from FFG to AMG, like it was just really easy for people to show up and play every other Wednesday and have decent attendance at things. And then just as in-person play declined and then product declined and stuff like that, we were talking just about how important it is to actively maintain that community because it'll just dry up for a variety of factors. So, now that's why I'm excited about Josh's podcast and, his league that he's trying to get organized, because that's the kind of stuff that will keep the community coming back. Is just when they're able to engage on a semi-regular basis with things.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. So we've set some dates. We have a venue, and our local game store is willing to offer some prize support, perhaps. The days come and our first tournament's here. So a lot of the time, the person who has organized the event will end up playing. And whether you're playing it or not, how do you go about actually TOing the event? What might you do if someone has a rules question, or are there any intricacies to using T4 outside of the player perspective?
So my style of TOing really comes down to whether I'm doing our monthly ones that are meant to be more casual and a learning experience, and then our bigger tournament, which is the Ozark Mountain Open once a year. So for the casual ones, again, I want to just keep it casual. I want it to be more of a learning experience, but also allow people to experience the actual tournament setting. So if rules come up and need to make a call, try to stick to it, but we're not being harsh about it. And I heavily reference, I look at the rules reference all the time, and I also look on the AMG forums that have a lot of clarifications, because I am not a rules expert at all. I get rules wrong all the time, and I have to make corrections and apologize for making those corrections as a TO. And we just had one this past Saturday where I got the rules wrong the first call, and I had to look it up, and I had to let Bodie, had to let you and Wes know that I got it wrong, and you guys had to make adjustments. So when you're organizing your own tournaments locally, just say up front, and I usually do. I say up front, especially at the Osmo, that I don't know all the rules. I might have to collaborate with people to make sure I get the rules call right, and just be open about that. I'm not one of the world's judges. No one's calling me to be a world's judge. I am not that deep down to the rules. I might have to look things up. And when let's say you've done a couple of local tournaments, the casual ones, you want to organize a more bigger tournament, like an actual 4-round tournament, or maybe even a 2-round tournament, which we just expanded to ourselves last year. You need to be open about what you know and don't know about the rules, and that you're going to make the best calls you can. But you also need to level set with the players that if you make a ruling, that ruling does need to stand. It's important people to know whether it's a veteran player, because they might be used to more like a high level. We've got AMG or FFG people here judging, down to someone, this is their first tournament ever, and they're all nervous, their hands are shaking, that the cornerstone is you as the TO, and that the buck stops with you. So you might have someone that's super experienced at tournaments that decided to travel to your brand new local tournament that you're running for the first time. You need to make sure they understand that your word is still going to be final, even if you might get it wrong. That's a worst case scenario, but what you don't want to have happen is arguments happening between yourself and players on the floor. Fortunately, that's never happened with me. But I've always tried to level set at the beginning. I give a little speech at the beginning of every Osmo that, I want everybody to have fair play. I want everyone to have good sportsmanship. If you need a rules call, please call me over. A measurement call, please call me over. And that whatever I call, that's gonna be the ruling. And I've never had an issue with that. And Armada is a great community as a whole compared to other games. I don't think you're gonna have problems with other players with that kind of mindset. So if you are setting up a tournament like that, we're gonna have more players in. You have large, quote unquote, high dollar prize support, and it's more high stakes. Also make sure, and I usually do this before, not usually, I've done it before every Osmo, I reread the rules reference to try to make sure I'm up to date so that I can make the right calls. And I can be confident when I say that the calls that I make are final, so we can move along and still have a good play experience for everybody at the tournament for that day or those 2 days, depending on how long you're doing a tournament for.
Yeah, Ben, I would add in too that it's gotten a lot easier to TO things with the slowdown in release schedules. So like most rules interaction questions have been asked and answered. So like a quick look on websites like Slicer Tools, there's all sorts of digital resources. So even in the middle of a tournament, you can generally look things up pretty quickly. So I think that's made it a lot easier too. Is like you're not. I don't see people flipping through the instruction manuals anymore.
Yeah, and that's a great. I mean, the great thing about Armada, the bright side of if you want to make lemons out of lemonade as the slow release schedule for Armada, is that the rules have been pretty stable for many years now. So we don't have to be looking for super nuanced change that happen every 3 months or every 2 months compared to other game systems that are constantly changing.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So before we move on to talking about content creation, do you have any final tips for getting players to come back? And I don't want to push on Admiral Tater, especially because he's not here. But how you might go about getting some kind of prize support, or if you have any tips for getting people who were like, well, that was fun, I'm not sure if I will do it again, how to incentivize them to return.
Yeah, so it really does come down to prize support for sure if you're doing a little tournament setting. And leaving Admiral Tater to the side for now, the easiest way is one, store credit at your local game store. That incentivizes your local game store owners to want to actively participate in your tournaments to host them. And it encourages the people that play to want to actually invest in the local game store. Another thing that helps, especially if you're going to do, you might not want to do this if you're going to be doing monthly or semi-monthly tournaments, but if you want to do one quote-unquote larger tournament for the year, just, invest yourself in a couple items that people would be interested in. Grab a squadron pack off eBay or Amazon or something, or maybe a single ship upgrade pack and say, first prize is going to get this, second prize is going to get this. I know that, I don't want to just assume everyone just has finances out the wazoo they can spend money on, but just 1 or 2 upgrade packs of some kind of Armada that you're willing to give away, that'll incentivize people to come back saying, ooh, not only can I maybe win store credit, but I might also win this, a raider that I haven't been able to find or something. But just 1 or 2 things to incentivize people to keep coming back that I could potentially win this is a good incentive. Now, I do want to talk about Admiral Tater because he's been such a boon for the community for years now in supporting local tournaments, both big and small. I know Garrett well enough that I feel confident saying this, that he is willing to support anyone that is doing a tournament that wants to have his prize support in their tournament. And he is willing to work with you on the price and how much it'll cost you, etc. and then you can work that cost and how much you want to charge people to come play in your tournament so you can offset it. So I'm not going to go into too many specifics here. I think you guys should probably, I would encourage y'all to try to get Garrett on here, talk about that more specifically. But in general, guys, Admiral Tater, he's a resource. He's willing. He's there. Utilize him. Reach out. He's a very easygoing guy. He's willing to work with people. Don't be afraid to reach out to him. If you have a tournament you want to organize, you want prize support, reach out to Garrett. I promise you he'll be willing to help you out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on that, Ben. Well, something that we've been experimenting with for the last, year or so in the DFW area is for our tournaments is like half of the entry fee for stuff like that will go to prize support, just a pool to help offset some of the costs. Because for a while, when there was nothing coming out for prize support, me and a couple of other players would just buy to, just pool our own funds and to buy rapid reinforcement cards or whatever when those came out. So we'd have something to hand out to people. But it gets expensive. So we started that, and it seems to be working pretty well. So that's another way to literally get people invested in the community. It's just like, hey, half of today's entry fee is going to go to prize support for the community. Would you like to, contribute? It kind of makes it feel a little better when you're paying those fees, I guess. But that's another way to kind of sustain things.
Yeah, that's actually a great idea. I haven't even thought about that. Do more like a long-term investment in it.
Yeah, and
yeah,
we just have a community spreadsheet that like 4 or 5 people have access to, and we just keep track of it, and then we use that to get whatever.
One thing that I'll add before we move on is when I was running little events in Russellville, I went to one of my stores when the Suma of All Things event kit came out, and I was just like, hey, there's this new Armada product and I need it urgently. And they were just like, sure, we got you. And then I didn't hear anything back about it. So I went to the other local game store and I was like, hey, this thing just came out and I need it urgently. And they were like, we got you. And then both kits came in on the same week. And so I ended up buying both of them just out of my own pocket. And they were like $30 each. But I had, I think it comes with enough for 8 players in both boxes, or like in each box. Enough promos and Suma tokens and all of that good stuff. And so the first time that we had a little 4-person tournament, I just gave everybody one of the Intensify Firepower promos and a little Suma kit and the instructions. And I was like, here you go. Just you showed up, have a little gift.
Yeah, and just small incentives like that can be huge. I think it was, and just this is just a recent example. Just 2 months ago for our April monthly tournament, my brother-in-law had happened to buy a random upgrade card pack. He already had one, and he was able to get another one on sale super cheap, and he's had it for like 6 months. And he just gave it to me earlier in the year this year. It's like, hey, here's something for you to give away at one of your tournaments. So I just had that. And so I gave that to, I didn't even give it to the top player. I gave it away we had 2 new players from Jonesboro who are brand new to the game, a father and son. And I didn't know how I was going to give it away yet. And I just decided at the end, you know what? I'm going to give it to these 2 brand new players because everybody else that played had already had an upgrade card pack. I decided just to give it to them just as an incentive for being a new player coming out to our local community to play. And, they are back just this last weekend, and they're now super invested in coming to these events every month. And that's not, for those that don't know, Jonesboro to our area is not an easy drive, and it's a time commitment. But they're really invested in the game, and just small gestures like that to new players can help basically make them quote unquote repeat customers, repeat players to your local community, just doing small gestures like that.
Yep.
It's just like selling drugs. The first round's free.
Yeah.
Hey,
I don't know. I don't know if we can put that on there.
PG. Actually, can I share just one really cool thing that I stole from Alan down in the Houston area was what he called it table bounties. And this is another way to, like, buy stock if your local game store has Armada stuff, like the card sets, or like a copy of, or squadrons, or what are the expansions called? Rebellion in the Rim and Corellian.
Oh yes, Corellian Conflict.
So, like,
yeah,
little stuff like that. That's like $20 to $30, and he would just buy like 3 for each tournament, and then just roll a die, random table. Whoever wins that round, hey, you just won a copy of blah 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 blah. And just kind of each round having some fun with randomness that way, as a way to buy stock off your game store shelves as well. So I thought that was kind of a clever idea.
Yeah, I like those table bounties. He did those. I remember him doing those a few years back for a couple of the tournaments I drove down for.
Before we move on to another topic, I think something I'd like to add is that when AMG puts out stuff, as a community, we should support it. Based on the interview done by Will Shake recently on Krabak's YouTube video, or YouTube channel, what am I saying? So based on that, it sounds like they're going to do tournament kits again, or store championship kits, but without the invite, which is fine. We've already talked about that. But I think that when we can, as a community, support AMG and the product and the game that we love, I think we should try our best to do that before we venture off into unofficial stuff.
100%.
That's my own. Yeah, that's my own opinion. Other people may think differently from me, but that's my idea.
No, I was looking back through the Facebook page, and I saw some pictures from the tournament we had in December with that awesome kit that they sent with the Worlds ticket. We had it all laid out, and it was great. We love when we could buy that stuff.
For sure, yeah. I don't think they're necessarily hurting for artwork. I think that they just have a pipeline that just gets clogged up.
Mm-hmm.
They've got so many checks and balances trying to put stuff out. I'm sure it's difficult to make anything move. But I do think I have like high hopes for where Armada's going to go. I don't think Armada's dead. I don't think that Armada's really only going to be dead when people stop playing it.
Yeah.
All right. So with that being said, we'll move on into some questions that I have about making content. And so for this, I kind of want to go back and forth between Ben and Josh, because you guys have kind of two opposite ends of the spectrum. Ben has recording videos. Well, obviously it's a recording, but Ben has video content, a lot of gameplay type of things, and live streams. And Josh, you have a podcast. And so I'll address these questions to both of you guys. What resources are required at the startup? What kinds of things, before you spend any money on any gear, if you have, what resources did you use to start?
I can go first. Mine is rather simple. So for podcasting, all you really need are some ideas. I think that having a solid set of ideas and conversation stuff to talk about is really central to starting a podcast. I can't tell you if this is a good podcast. I'd like to know kind of what our listeners think. Like, are we doing well or maybe not? I don't know. But I really enjoyed talking about gaming and competitive play, stuff like that, community building. The reason I want to do community building is because I want to see the game thrive. That's why I'm here. So that's kind of like the groundwork for why I wanted to start the project. That is the podcast. And I was talking to some of my buddies about this prior to starting the podcast, but we talk about Armada so much behind the scenes. It wouldn't be that hard just to put some mics in front of us and hit record and just like shoot the breeze and talk about Armada and what we think and how we can make it better, or something that we really love about it. But past the conceptualization of it, all I really need to do to make this happen is Discord. I need to download a simple app called Craig that I use to record the audio. Craig joins you in the Discord channel, records your voices individually, and then at the end it'll pump out a MP4 or a Audacity file, which is what I use. So I'll download the free Audacity program from the internet, and then I go through, do some editing, and then when I'm done, save it as an MP4 file, and then upload it to the various websites where I disseminate it. So as for cost, I do recommend getting yourself a nice microphone. I recommend your friends get nice microphones. And then past that, it's a requirement of time to actually sit down, think about your podcast. What I've noticed about podcasts is that if you have an itinerary or a plan of where your conversation's heading, then it turns into a good conversation and people are willing to listen to it. If you have a conversation where you just start off in point A and then you go meander, like going down a river, back and forth and around the bend, you get lost in this conversation. Sometimes it's good to listen to as like background noise, but as someone who's in the audience trying to follow what's going on, if you jump around too much, it can lose people. And I think that it loses people's attention, and then their investment in it is kind of lost also. So on our podcast, we have some show notes we write up each time. We have an itinerary, just like beginning, end, and then the topic we have. We go through those notes, and then our conversation is still pretty, I'd say it's still very natural, going back and forth and expressing our thoughts and ideas. So it's curated, but it's still organic, I think. So the biggest commitment is time. Time in editing, time in preparing. If you overall, I think that it takes me, outside of recording time, about an hour and a half to edit, and that time will probably decrease over time as I get better at it. And then prior to the show, maybe like 30 minutes, 45 minutes to write up the notes, and after we've already had an idea or discussion about what we're going to talk about. So does that hit all the bases?
Yeah, that sounds great to me. Ben, I know your experience was a little bit different.
Yeah. If you want, so as Car is doing audio only podcasts, I can't speak to that. Those are a little bit of a different beast. But when it comes to recording things, it's surprisingly simple to get started. All you need is a smartphone with a camera. And if you don't even want to bother editing, if you want to just do live start to finish, you can just record on your phone and you can upload directly to YouTube right there using YouTube Studio. And YouTube is free. So if you want to just go bare bones, I want to start recording Armada bat reps. You don't have to pay anything. You can use your phone. You use the mic on your phone, and you can upload directly to YouTube. That's very bare bones. If you want to start editing your videos, obviously you need a computer for that. And there's actually quite a few different free software suites you can use that are very basic. If we're just starting off, basic is all you need. I use Cyberlink. I pay for the full suite of effects now because I want to be able to record and edit in 4K and get more powerful editing tools. But you don't need that if you don't want. Just basic HD and just basic editing, fades, etc. There's a free version that you can download right now. And I know for Mac users, there's even better software that's free if you want just the basic versions. So again, just a smartphone, a computer, and a free editing software plus YouTube, and you can start putting out bat reps with no cost to yourself monetarily. As Josh said, it just takes time. So getting started on paper is relatively easy. The reality is actually doing it. You find out when you're trying to actually hold your phone in your hand while trying to move ships on the table and roll dice, like, oh, maybe I need a gimbal or something, or a stand to hold my phone now to place a static camera. And you'll start learning those things as you go along. And then you might decide, oh, I want to do some more cool edits and more fades and more better angles. Maybe I might pay for a cheap software program. And you can start going that route. Or maybe I want a little bit of a better microphone. You can do that. And you can slowly upgrade over time, which is what I did. The software and the equipment that I had. And just experiment as you go. But to get started, it takes almost nothing monetarily with our modern world we live in. Most people have smartphones and access to the internet. You can get started right now if you wanted to. As far as getting your name out there and getting views and hits and subscribers, one, when you make a video, quote unquote, advertise it. Put it on Krabik's Star Wars Armada page on Facebook. That's where you're going to get the most hits, I promise you. Go on, there's multiple Discord hubs for Armada. Advertise it there. But beyond that, the most important thing starting off is volume. Now, I can get away with now that I can... My video output has reduced drastically since I first started just because life's getting in the way. But when I first started, I was putting out 2 to 3 videos every week. At the very least, 2 videos a week. Just volume, just so people see it on the Facebook page when you're posting that it's up. They start getting used to your name. And also, the YouTube algorithm is a thing. The more you put out, the more people are going to see it, the more the algorithm is going to put it on people's feeds. And when you post on YouTube, do that keyword thing. I'm not going to get into the specifics now because I can't do a visual representation, but go into your settings in YouTube Studio and put in keywords. It'll help. It's not huge, but it'll help. Put in Star Wars Armada, gaming, models, tabletop gaming. These are just small little things that when people are just searching generically, it just might give you a bump on people's search algorithms in YouTube. And the more videos you have out, more chances one of yours might hit on someone's page. They might see it, and they might be like, oh, I might just check this out. And even if they only check it out for 10 to 20 seconds, that's still a hit. That helps your algorithm and gives you another bump for the next person that's searching. So yeah, I'm rambling a little bit, but I would say beyond the financial costs or the equipment costs, starting off, do volume. The more you do, the more you can put out at the start. That'll help you build your base. Then you'll have more forgiveness later down the line if you have like scheduling conflicts and you can't get as many videos out a certain week or whatever.
That actually ties great into my next question. So, Ben, you've been running your YouTube channel, you said 2017?
No, that was when I started playing Armada. I started my channel, it was 2021 of January. It was when I put out my first video. We just had our 3-year anniversary this past January.
That's right. So how long did it take for you to kind of develop personality, or I guess develop this presence? Like, when did you notice that you're actually getting progress in channel growth?
So I started, it took about 2 or 3 weeks, and I started getting about 20 to 30 people to subscribe to my channel and regular reviews on my bat reps. And I was, that we were still in lockdown, working from home. I had reduced hours, so I was just, going down to Social General Rob's place, and we were filming bat reps all the time. Or I just film like just a random video at my computer, just something to get content out. And that volume just helped. And again, this was kind of like a perfect storm because it was COVID. People were all shut in. It helped that since I was putting things out and not a lot of people were putting things out at the time, that I was all there was other than Ion Radio and Krabbuck. But since I kept putting my name out there, it just kept coming up on people. It's like, oh, this is something I can click on. And it was about the 3-month mark was when I started getting over 100 subscribers. And then that summer of 2021, there was a clear spike in views. I don't know what happened, to be honest. I don't know what caused the change. But the summer of 2020 started the largest growth so far in my channel, where I went from roughly 100 subscribers to almost 500 or 600 subscribers in less than 3 months. Now that's small potatoes compared to some of the like Ion Radio and Krabbuck, but for me that was huge, and I was content with that. And then after that, it just was being consistent, putting something out. I was still doing 2 videos a week at that point, so it was a consistency thing where people could know that they could count on me to have a video out twice a week to look at.
So, Josh, you're still relatively new to the content grind. This is episode 6. Have you felt like you've seen any trends, noticed anything show specific growth or loss in views?
Not particularly. I'm not really, personally, I'm not very concerned with, I'm not really concerned with being too big of a podcast. I understand, like, this is something I have the opportunity to do in this season of my life. So I am just trying to have fun with it. So I think it is a good point where I can put my thoughts out there in the community and try to make the community a better place, make it bigger, make it grow, and then hopefully bring people together around this game that we love. So as for trends, I haven't really noticed any. Like our first couple episodes had some really good retention. We had a lot of people listening right when Worlds was canceled. Maybe canceled in air quotes. But after that, I think personally I got a little busy at work, as one does. So my effort that I put into like disseminating the podcast wasn't as large. So I do want people to listen, and I do want people to hear my thoughts, not in some selfish way, but because I want the community to improve. So that's kind of why I'm doing all this. There's several reasons, but that's one of them. But right now we don't have any trends. Right now we're mostly just plateaued, and I'm not too concerned about it.
Well, I do want to say, we talked about this before we started recording, so I'll say it here. Whenever you post a podcast, post that you've done it on the Armada Facebook page, Krabbuck's page, because that's going to help you get views right there, period.
Mm-hmm.
And for anyone else that's listening that wants to start something, advertise on that page. Krabbuck is our godfather when it comes to Armada content. He's already done all the groundwork. He has a community built. Use it. That Facebook page has tens of thousands of people that visit there all the time. Just put your name out there. Someone might see it in your feed and just click on it just for the heck of it and see what might happen. And for anyone that's interested in any long-term, like actual, I want to grow my channel stuff, I'm not the person to talk to because, like you, Josh, this is a hobby for me. I don't want it to be a job. I don't care about making money off it. But I would reach out to Ken from Ion Radio, see if he'd be willing to come here on here as a guest. they are machines as far as building an actual brand, building a base, making it financially viable. If you want that aspect of community content for Armada, etc., those are the experts to look to, for sure.
Cool. I will keep that in mind.
So, have there been any aspects of this journey that have been particularly trivial, or have there been anything that you found specifically difficult?
For me, it was after about the 1.5 year mark when I first started the channel. Like I said, I was putting out 3 videos most every week, but consistently 2 videos a week, and I just got run down by the grind. I just don't have the personality to do it like a lot of YouTubers do. So after about the first 1.5 years, I just got burnt out, and I started taking longer breaks between video content, and just had to be like, I'm gonna go play another game, not Armada. I have to take a break or do something that's not Armada. So that's where I kind of hit a wall, and I had to remind myself, this is my hobby. I don't want it to be a job. I want it to still be fun. So that's when I really restructured personally how I approached my channel and my content. But it was also around that time when I started organizing with Josh and Aaron of putting together a local tournament, which I want to give a shout out real quick. The Ozark Mountain Open, that wasn't me. That was Josh's idea. It was his name. I want to give credit where credit's due. So he came up with the name. But anyway, it was around that time when we decided to start doing the tournament thing. So that was actually a new thing to get me reinvigorated into the game and start building the community anew, away from content creation, which was getting kind of rote and mundane for me at the time. So, and that really helped my own personal health, you could say, mental health. Where now that I approach my channel a lot more casually now, I put content out, as best I can, but I don't stress about it anymore. And that's not good if you want to grow the channel. If anyone that's been following me the past 3 years have noticed that I've kind of plateaued at sub 900 subscribers. I haven't grown that much in 2 years, but that's okay for me. If you want to grow heavily, you got to get the grind in, which that's not for me. But recognizing what your strengths are, what you want, and then being okay with that, I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that you have reached a plateau that you've really made for yourself, really, because there aren't that many people in the Armada community that consume media too often, I would say. I think 1,000 subscribers is about, actually, we can talk numbers later probably, but I think 1,000 subscribers is right near the top of the plateau of the number of people that will be committed to watching something on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right for Armada for sure. I can only think of, I think Ion Radio is the only true Bat Rep Armada channel that has, several thousand subscribers. Obviously Crab, but he does a bunch of other stuff. It's not just Armada.
So my last question before we'll let Josh take it into the elevation section. I don't know if this has affected either of you guys, but for me personally, it's kind of anxiety inducing to have a bunch of people you don't know listening to your voice. If this is something you've struggled with, how have you gotten over that anxiety?
Well, that's never been a problem for me, because as a hobby, I'm an actor, and I actually did acting professionally, or at least I tried to act professionally, many, many years ago. And even as a kid, I was kind of a ham. So even though I'm an introvert socially, I put a camera on me or put me on a stage, I'm ready to start being a character. So I've never had an issue with talking in front of a camera, talking in front of a mic, talking in front of people. So when, it was one of those easy transitions. It wasn't a barrier for me when I started filming myself for this content, or filming myself playing games.
For me, it's not too dissimilar, I would say. So when I was a child, this is a kind of little funny story. Look into my childhood. Um, so we had this family talk show that my older brother, my older sister, and we all kind of set up for ourselves, and it was kind of spontaneous. I don't think either of my parents uh like encouraged us to do this, but we started off on this talk show, and we would act out our favorite characters from movies or like various media, and each of us would take turns hosting the show. So I started hosting the talk show, like I don't remember how old I was. I was thinking I was like 6 years old or something. There's probably still family home videos of this somewhere, but that's where I got my talk show start. So we had several episodes that we did, and then like growing up, I've always been like, I don't know, I've been pretty shy and reserved, I would say. But when I went late in high school and then throughout college, I also like did some volunteering. I volunteered for about 5 years at a nonprofit where I was uh, helping high school age boys like navigate things throughout their life. So I have some experience like talking in front of a group, and then after that, I went into teaching in academia a little bit while I was in grad school. So I taught several classes, laboratory. After I think about a couple times, I got over myself, and it wasn't too hard. As for the podcast, I mostly just think about it like I'm talking to you guys. Like I'm not really concerned about whoever is on the other end of this that's going to listen and throw shade or give me judgment. Like I'm totally open to criticism. Uh one of the things that I had to learn whenever I was getting into Armada was like not necessarily like criticism from other people, but criticism from myself, like how to take that. Because as a competitive person, I don't like to lose, and I didn't like to lose. Um, but now I've gotten to a point where I don't view losing a game the same way as I used to, and losing for me, what I'll tell people nowadays is like you're not really losing unless you don't learn something from it. So losing a game in the grand scheme of things is a learning opportunity. It can help you improve. But in this game where we get to, or this and other games, it's an opportunity to grow yourself and like stretch yourself. So having an L on the scoreboard at the end of that, it's not something to feel bad about. In the same way, I kind of view that through my podcasting lens through that of I am starting from point A. I don't know where this is going to take me, and if I make some mistakes along the way, that's okay. I'm going to learn from it, and we're going to grow. So I can improve over time. So that's kind of my thought.
Sweet. Well, speaking of L's, let's talk about some crappy stuff in Armada that we can improve.
All right, deal. So this section of the podcast is what we call the elevation section of the podcast. This is an area where we take aspects of the game, be it objectives, interactions, cards, including like upgrades or commanders, which I guess are upgrades as well, but any aspect of the game that we think can be fine-tuned or improved to make the game more enjoyable, more fun, more competitive, in any of those options. So to take us away is actually myself on the show notes. Now that we've revealed their show, now that we have revealed that we have show notes, I'm just going to keep referencing it. My elevation for this week is Rebel Y-Wings. And I know what everyone's going to say. The Rebels don't need any buffing in their squadron department. But let me retort. This is not true. So Rebel Y-Wings are deficient, not in that they're super terrible, they're just not good. So how do we know they're not good? The reason we know they're not good is because of Republic Y-Wings. Republic Y-Wings are just badass. Let's just say that. They have a blue and a black. You couple it with flight controllers, they get 2 blues and a black. when you go into bomb, you can use Plo Koon or some other thing and boost their bombing ability, which is great. They're cheap, and they're not too slow at speed 3. They've got 6 hull, so it gives you a lot of opportunity to use something like Ruthless Strategist. They give you a special case for using. Let me look up this upgrade card real quick. I think it is Advanced Transponder Net. So this is a card I think does not get much action, but I think it should, because in the Republic department, I think this is a really good card. Specifically because they have good Y-Wings. For Rebels, though, if we think about this thematically, it does make sense that the Republic Y-Wing would hit harder or it's just better because they have the best models. And then when they get to the Rebels, then they're basically broken down and almost on the scrap heap before the Rebels get them. If anything, I believe that the Rebel Y-Wings should be faster. I'm okay with them losing the black dice, but they should be faster. They should be speed 4. And then I think maybe that balances it out. It also gives it a little strange dichotomy where you have a fast bomber or a decently fast bomber. It's not crazy. Speed 4. And then you have an escort that's paired with it that can't keep up. So the X-Wings and the YT-1300s are both slower than that. So that's an interesting thought. That's what I have so far for the Rebel Y-Wings. I think they need to be buffed. They don't see enough action other than Dutch. So that's my answer, is give them speed 4. And I think they deserve it lore-wise.
I would disagree slightly there, though, Josh. I mean, Gold Squadron is stapled to a fair number of lists.
I was going to say Gold Squadron is probably my favorite, unique, that doesn't have defense tokens. Like, Saber Squadron's great and all, but Gold Squadron has my heart.
The generics, yes, but Gold is, yeah.
I agree, yes. Gold Squadron is, out of all the Rebel squadrons, is actually my favorite because it's cheap. I can hold squadrons down. It's got 2 dice for bombing, and I don't need to shoot anything. If I do, I can maybe use Tauren, which is fine. Gold Squadron is, in my opinion, great. But the generics do need help.
Yeah.
What if, here's a thought, what if just all Rebel Y-Wings were made as Gold Squadron?
Oof.
That should be the standard.
Broken faction.
Broken.
I do think that might break
heavy
it.
too.
Yeah, because Gold's not heavy either. Yeah. Broken.
Yeah, I want them to have heavy. I'm fine with that. Having 2 bomber dice, I think, cuts into the B-Wing squadrons. Like, why would you take a B-Wing then, you know?
You don't, because everything's Gold Squadron.
Yeah.
Fair.
B-Wings are also hard to take. I think in the future, we need to have an elevation for them. But I don't know. We'll talk about that some other time.
I just played B-Wings this previous weekend, and I still took Gold Squadron in that fleet. So.
Yeah, I mean, that is the right choice. All right, so that's the long and the short of my elevation. Let's move it over to Ben, aka Downsizeit.
Well, I'm going to go with an obvious one, and that's the Imperial Victory. This thing needs some serious love. It's, I know there are people in the niche that like it, but objectively, it's a terrible ship. And that only is because it was the very first Imperial ship ever made. And it has not gotten any updates since the beginning, except for the Hero title that came down. I think it was Rebellion of the Rim. I forget where the Hero title came from, which made it somewhat viable. But it needs a page 1 rewrite because it is outperformed by Imperial Star Destroyers of any kind. Even though, again, it is much cheaper than an Imperial Star Destroyer, but the points difference does not match the exponential increase you get when you decide, I'm just going to take an ISD of some kind. Doesn't matter. 1, 2, Kuat Simoon, it's worth the 20 points plus you're paying to get rid of the victory. And the big part of it is the speed 2. I don't know why victories were speed 2 in the first place. But making them speed 3 would help them a lot. You could even say just make them the same as the Republic victory. The Republic victory is so much better than the Imperial victory. It's laughable how much better the Republic victory is. And that just comes down to getting the salvo and the upgrade slot changes. So I think the Imperial victory needs help to where it gets some upgrade slot changes, make it speed 3. It's supposed to be better than the Republic victory. It's gotten some, overhaul upgrades or whatever as its life has been extended into the Imperial era. And maybe upgrade its points by a few points. But just make it viable compared to an ISD. Again, I know the points difference is like 20 plus points or whatever. But what you're getting when you go from, I'm going to take a victory 2 as opposed to a Kuat, it's almost not even a choice. Yes, I'm going to pay the extra points for the Kuat, please. Anyway, there's my rant on the victory. It all comes down to, it was the first ship made. It needs help. It needs an updated 2.0 rewrite to make it viable now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's different things you can do to change it to make it more viable. It's one of the only ships in medium base or large. Well, let's say this. It's one of the only ships, period, that has the same flak between both variants. And it's just meh all around, basically. You can build it, and I have built it before to do some really great stuff. Like the Victory 1 class Star Destroyer, I think, is probably costed correctly. I think the Victory 2 is overcosted. And I don't know, I did say it was meh, but you can do some really great stuff with this. But like you said, like there's just a little more of an investment, and then you get something that's more survivable, has a lot more in its toolkit, and can have a presence across the board, as opposed to something that can only move speed 2, or you can have a single ship that moves up to effectively speed 3 with engine techs. And then when you add in engine techs, you're paying an extra 11 points for that and the Hero title. So it's kind of hard to take that at any point in the game. If you want something hitting heavy, then you want to take an Onager or a Kuat, sometimes an ISD2.
Yeah, and the speed thing is really the killer. There are other aspects that are so bad for it. Again, upgrade slots could help it, but speed 2 is so bad. Think of other speed 2 ships in the game. So let's look at the assault cruiser MC-80. It's speed 2, but it's a broadside ship. It doesn't care if it's speed 2. It's so hard to get around to the vulnerable parts of an MC-80 assault cruiser. Now look at the Imperial Victory. It's speed 2. It only has one arc you care about. It is so easy to maneuver around it to get into its weak-ass side and rear arcs, where it can't do anything to you. And it can't do anything about it.
Yeah, the MC-80 can also take engine techs natively.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I think one thing that kind of separates the Imperial Victory from the Republic one, I don't think that the Republic one is better for like many specific reasons. The salvo is pretty cool, but the fact that Svatis exists.
Spati, yeah, absolutely.
So the solution might just be like a victory-specific ordnance, like Svati type thing for your sides.
I'm not even sure if that's quite necessary, because disposable capacitors is great on a Victory 2, and you really only need it typically for one turn before you're engaged at medium. So I think that if you play it right, I don't think you really need Svati on Victory 2 for Imperials. But, I mean, it would be great.
Yeah, I'm talking Victory 1. Because the black dice, I mean, that's so easy to avoid.
I think that the Victory 2, or the Victory in general for the Imperials, needs to have a different token suite just by changing one of the tokens. Just one of the redirects, probably.
Yeah, and I will say this. An easy fix for the Imperial Victory, for the 1 and 2, give it a defensive upgrade. Defensive retrofit.
Mm.
Just give it that, and then immediately and don't even increase the cost. Just give it defensive retrofit, and all of a sudden, even though it's still slow, it needs to be faster. You've still given it the survivability. Victories are so easy to kill. From my perspective, when I play against them, I have no problem when I see Imperial victories across the board because I know they're going to be easy to kill.
Mm-hmm.
Because they can't, and it all comes down to ECM. ECM is so powerful when you can't put that on a ship, it makes that particular ship so much easier to take down. I'd much rather have a Rebel assault frigate over an Imperial victory just for that fact alone.
Yeah. Well, with Tua, at least you can have one with it on there.
Right. Yeah, but you have to sacrifice the officer slot for Tua. So,
yeah. That's a huge price.
Yeah.
Given, I don't know if you meant to do a pun there or not, but given that the fact that there is price, like price on a Victory 2 with Warlord is pretty nice. Like, if it's like a cheaper onager nowadays because you discaps, you have somebody at long range, con fire, use spinals.
I mean that's fair, but price is the trump card for every Imperial ship.
Yeah.
Price on any Imperial ship, and it makes it better.
True. I do think that, like, the way I run victories, I really like putting Nita on them because it gives me an evade, and then that gives someone like the opportunity to choose: do I want to lock down their evade or brace? Likely they'll, if they have price usually, then they'll do both, and then you can redirect. So you're not just completely screwed. So I think Nita on a victory is the way to go. I think Nita on a interdictor is also the way to go. Like, Nita's super good. For 2 points, he's a insane buy.
Yeah, Nita's great.
I want to add one more thing. I think the Victory 2 should be 80 points. And then I would say, barring its speed, that helps balance it out quite a bit. Drop it by 5 points.
So I'm going to use my elevation slot to crash talk every single CIS commander. And this is coming from someone who CIS is my favorite faction. I like the aesthetic of the ships, which I'll disagree with Ben on the aesthetic of every single ship. All of the ones that I like, he thinks are terrible. But can we really trust someone who thinks that giant triangles are cool? I mean, come on. We've got this Recusant that looks like this skeletal. I don't know. It's just great. It's awesome. But the commanders are garbage. Specifically relating to their cost. And just going through Ryan Kingston's, Trench is my favorite commander in the game. And that's only just because I like the really niche kind of token interactions and sending tokens from one ship to another and then turning them to dials. And I just think that's fun. And it's kind of like this engine Rube Goldberg type of thing. And I enjoy that across all of the games that I play. But 36 points. I mean, I don't think that any of the commanders that are above 30 points actually deserve that cost. But Trench requires you to jump through so many hoops that, like, you're paying so much extra, throughout the whole fleet that you basically have like a 40+ point commander, and that doesn't even count all of the ships that you need to have token generation and whatnot. Dooku is cool, raiding is awesome, but you only get it for 3 turns, and that's basically paying 10 points per raid across the whole fleet. And at that point, I'd rather have B2s. And General Grievous is just the best option, I think, and that's only because of his point cost. His ability lets you be a little bit more, carefree with your defense tokens. And there are some niche situations where I really enjoy having Grievous, like with thermal shields and whatnot. But his ability does nothing proactive, and your opponent can choose to just not play the Grievous game, and then you've just wasted your commander slot. Kraken is fine, but he doesn't do anything to actually increase the odds. He just makes your floor better. Like, he doesn't increase your ceiling at all. And there are some things that you can do with accuracy generation or crit effects that are cool. But he basically streamlines you into playing MSU, because you have to have that ship at close to medium range, and then you have to have other ships to take advantage of it. And when you have a 30-point Admiral, that doesn't leave a whole lot of room for upgrades on those other things. So it's no surprise that the best Kraken list is literally naked ships. And Martuk is probably my least favorite commander in the entire faction, because his downside, honestly, has made him feel irrelevant. And I think it's cool that he's actually at a similar price point to Ramadi. It just felt ridiculous when Ramadi was 20 points, because he's better in every single way. And Martuk does add dice to your ships, which is cool, and everyone likes adding red dice. But the fact that his ability is countered sometimes by redirect defense tokens, and sometimes when you get them down to no shields and you're having to cancel dice, and it feels so bad when you are actually suffering from his downside. There's no reason why he needs to be 28 points. Make him 20. And then, because he's still worse than Ramadi. Ramadi never makes you drop dice. And then finally, TF1726. Everyone has complained about the fact that he's not actually a 26-point Admiral, because you need to have at least 2 or 3 copies of B2s. And each one of those, it's a good card, it's fine, but each one of those just adds a black dice. So, it's just kind of the compounding amount of points that you're having to pay that overall makes the fleet just a least efficient, MSU list. That's the rant. Give us pre-nerf Anakin and Separatists. Please don't do that.
No, thank you. No.
Yeah, I will say, pre-nerf Anakin was... I've had some, tough matchups before, but I think pre-nerf Anakin was prior to, my first time facing an SSD, felt broken. You figure out how to play against it. Same thing with an Onager, felt broken. I was a new player when both these things came out, so those things, I didn't really have fun the first few times until I figured out how to play against it, and I took some work. Pre-nerf Anakin was the one time where I felt like I am not having fun playing this game, and I don't know if I want to, I'm going to build around it, and I'm going to do my best, but playing against Anakin, I did not have a lot of fun. So that was, maybe the only commander in the game where I felt like this is kind of rubbish. I'm not into this. So as for the other Sys commanders, I don't know. I can't really give too many opinions because I haven't played them yet. So I'll just let your comments stand.
I didn't realize you still hadn't played any of the CIS commanders.
I've played one, and it was Grievous.
Yeah.
I do think I'm on board with Bodhi's statement that Grievous is mostly the only commander that you really want to take because the other ones are so expensive, and it's a good ability, especially for ships that are lacking in defensive retrofits. So good on Recusants, good for the hard cells, and then Like, the points you save can get you a decent squad ball, and you can put a lot of points into the ships to hurt somebody. But playing against this, I think that the Freedom Bot, TF, whatever, that was one of the worst to play against. Playing against Dooku was only really bad when you were going first, which if they're playing Dooku, they're probably going second and trying to raid you, so it's not... Playing Dooku wasn't terrible, but I would rather go against any of the other commanders than TF or probably Dooku.
I should probably elevate something rather than just saying that they're all bad. And none of them are like bad. It's just none of them do anything special. And Grievous sees a lot of play because he's cheap and he does something that no other commander does. But all of the others, I mean, you see like dice fixing across multiple different upgrade like types of cards. And you see dice ads on commanders in every faction. I guess except for Republic, but the way that I would elevate them is just unique abilities. Separatists don't really have an identity outside of self-sacrifice droids and some tokens shenanigans between their officers. And I think that the options of commanders should support those kinds of game styles. I think that there should be, rather than just having these generic officers that just, give you more dice. I mean, that's cool for some archetypes, and it does help what Separatists are trying to do in some game plans. But half of the commanders are just dice commanders, and that doesn't really feel very special. And Dooku, I mean, he doesn't really... he doesn't offer anything proactive in a lot of games. Same with Grievous, and your only options for a proactive choice are dice or dials.
I'll offer one more suggestion for Sis, and then we can hear comments from Ben and Chris about your take. But I think they should have a commander, 20 points, where they give every ship an offensive retrofit, even if they already have one. That way they can build a reserve hangar deck spam list, and I think that'd be cool.
The only thing I have to say is that I think it's hilarious that Trench costs more than Thrawn. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah, in terms of simplicity of use, yeah, it's crazy.
But Bodhi, I gotta say, I love how you run Trench. You run him really well, but it's still ridiculous that he costs more than Thrawn.
Well, I really appreciate that.
As you guys were talking about it, it did make me think about the lack of identity that CIS has, and even like the specialty cards that are supposed to give them identity. Like Josh, what was that one that you were experimenting with? Hyperspace.
Don't even get me started on Hyperwave Signal Boost. I'll talk for a whole podcast about Hyperwave Signal Boost.
And we know, we acknowledge that they're an incomplete faction, but even those faction specific cards, like Hyperspace, it's like, okay, it's kind of cool, but they have these weird limitations, where you're just like, oh, well, why bother? Like Invisible Hand or Hyperspace or stuff like that. I think it's the same limited effect that you're kind of describing with Kraken. It's like, okay, he adds dice and he has a weird, negative attached to him, and okay, that's just not exciting. As far as just getting to do something with the faction that is unique, Yeah,
everything in the faction just feels like you're doing what some other faction is doing, but worse.
Yeah.
Anyway, tell us about some E-Wings, Chris.
So, my E-Wing pitch is that on paper, that card is just cool. I feel like it should be out there on the table more. A speed 4 anti-squad squadron that can snipe and bomb. Like, it just seems like a natural complement to a couple of X-Wings. But it doesn't... I don't remember the last time I actually saw it. I've seen Corrin a couple times in some lists, but like just a generic E-Wing, not so much. And so I was just toying around with the idea of like what would need to change to draw more attention to that card. And I thought, well, maybe like drop a point or two, make them cost equivalent to an X-Wing. Maybe people would toy with them some more. And I think that's just led me to kind of piggyback on the need for a points adjustment in general, and the effect that would have on the game. Because the card itself, the E-Wing, I think the only problem I really see is just the cost. 15 seems like a lot. But I mean, you could leave the bomber, leave snipe, make it 13 points, get people using them. I don't know why they're not out there more, other than cost. Do you guys have any ideas why?
I love E-Wings. I think they're great lore-wise. One of my favorites, right up there with B-Wings when it comes to the Rebel faction. And I agree with you that they're just costed too high. I say leave them as is, cost them the same as an X-Wing, and then you have two different ships that are meant to be counterparts to each other in the lore. You just choose what you want. Do you need escorts, or do you need a fast interceptor? Costing them at 15, that puts them right up against a TIE Defender, and a TIE Defender eats them for lunch every time. They should not be costed essentially the same as a TIE Defender. They need to be the same as an X-Wing, and then you have two similar costing squadrons, but they have two different roles, and then I think you see them mixed and matched a lot more.
I think my issue with the cost of quite a few different generic squadrons is the fact that some aces are so cheap. Like, why? I mean, granted, this is between different factions, but why would you want a 15-point E-Wing when you can have Mauler Mythil for 15 points?
Right, exactly.
Or like, why would you want an E-Wing when you could just spend one more point and get Tycho, who has defense tokens and therefore is more survivable? It's faster, it outputs more damage, and, Red Bomber is cool, but like, a black non-bomber has the same amount of die faces that actually hit. Actually has more die faces that actually hit. And so I think, just generics in general are overcosted, and some aces are undercosted.
I think that's a pretty broad statement.
I would agree.
I'd like to tone it back a little bit, because I don't think Z-Wings need to be cheaper. I don't think Vultures need to be cheaper.
No.
I think some things do need to be cheaper. I think E-Wings is probably one of those things.
Well, and that's, I guess in an effort to elevate the E-Wing in the only way that makes sense with the card and within the faction by a little bit of a points adjustment, that just pointed me then back to the bigger idea that I think AMG could, give a steroid shot to the game pretty cost effectively with a points rebalancing. I mean, that would keep people going for quite a while. Just all the different combinations and what would open up and discovering little, niche things again. That's what was exciting about regular releases. It's just like, okay, how does this work with this? And how does this work with this? If there's an equitable way to figure out what would be healthy for the game. I mean, that's just a no-brainer in my mind for AMG, just to keep an interest alive.
Yep, I would agree, and it's an easy fix. Well, just think of how much with the FAQ changes they did when they nerfed Anakin, but they made the other changes, some points changes. That was a huge win, I think.
Yeah,
I agree. I think that was that, and nerf Anakin was the best move AMG's done. The rapid reinforcements is great. I love it. But the points rebalancing for the Onager and taking away something that was hurting the game with pre-nerf Anakin, I think, was something that they should be commended for, I guess.
I mean, I'm not a decision maker at AMG, but like I could even see him stretching something like that out over, several quarters, and just, hey, okay, for this quarter we're going to rebalance, all the mediums in the game, and here's some new print and play cards that you can use, and just like to keep anticipation and excitement building. I don't know.
Well, I think their move by releasing Anakin and then having to nerf him scared them away from releasing stuff that hasn't been play tested well yet. I could be wrong. They may just pop out some wild cards pretty soon. Who knows? But I think they're probably more reserved now after releasing that and seeing the effect it had on the game. It did have a positive impact in the fact that it made people buy Republic and jump into the game and have something really fun to play with. If you were playing against it, it wasn't that fun, though. So, yeah, and I think because of the reservation, I think what they're probably looking to do is have all this figured out behind the scenes. If this isn't consistent with all their other ideas of releasing stuff, probably figure out behind the scenes and have it ready to go, balanced and whatever they see fit, and then eventually release it. So I don't think they see the community really as an area for playtesting. I think I don't know, that's my take on that.
And that might be a topic for a whole nother episode. It's just how the playtesting works, how it's worked in the past, how they do it now. Like, it's just a mystery to me how they arrive at some of the decisions they did on some of the rapid reinforcement stuff. And it's not like a criticism thing. It's just like, I'm curious, like how they develop stuff and how things come forward for them.
Yeah, I'm also really curious about game design and how you make a game like Armada. I don't know what all the NDAs are for people who used to work on it or people who work in game design. I'd really like to get my hands on somebody so I could like sit them down and talk to them like, how did you develop this game? And why do you think it's such a success?
Oh, yeah.
So, and that's honestly something I'm really interested in. I don't think it's something that I will like exercise any more effort into than more than a hobby, but the thought of making your own game is kind of exciting. All right. Well, does anybody have any final thoughts to wrap up before we sign off?
No, I'm good.
I do not.
Yep, I am good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. All right. Well, everyone, this has been the Speculation Station. I'm your host, Captain Keller. If you're listening to us on YouTube, go ahead and give us a like and subscribe. Our today's shout out is going to go to a little channel called Downsizeit by Ben, hosted by Ben, aka Downsizeit, on YouTube. You can find his channel just by typing in the all one word Downsizeit, and he posts bat reps, tournament reports, and he keeps up to date with current news and events in Armada. So if you're listening to us on Spotify, I don't think there's a like button, but I think you may be able to leave us a comment. If you want to leave a comment on YouTube, please do. We read all those, and we can start up a discussion there if you'd like. So with that, thank you for listening. Hope you all have a great week, and keep playing Armada.